I was 35, but every time I looked in the mirror, there was one thing I was proud of. Time had been kind to me. Years of regular exercise, dedicated skincare, and a healthy lifestyle all came together to keep me looking youthful and radiant. My husband Daniel often reminded me how beautiful I was. But with his demanding job keeping him away from home so often, I sometimes forgot the last time he had said it. That morning, Daniel had already left for work by the time I woke up. The house was peaceful, and I cherished these quiet moments where I could focus entirely on myself. Deciding to take a long, relaxing shower, I grabbed a face mask and stepped into the bathroom. The warm water cascading over my body was soothing, helping me clear my thoughts. After my shower, I reached for my favorite red lingerie. Red had always been my color. It made me feel confident and powerful. As I dried my hair, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Peeling the mask off my face, I studied myself. I knew Daniel would have loved to see me like this, but with how little he was home, it was rare that he did. Lost in thought, I didn't hear the approaching footsteps until the bathroom door suddenly creaked open. My heart jumped. "Lucas!" I gasped, instinctively reaching for my towel. Lucas, Daniel's younger brother, stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide with shock. His face turned a deep shade of red as he quickly averted his gaze. "Amanda, I'm so sorry," he stammered. "I didn't know you were in here. The door was slightly open and I needed to grab something." For a moment, neither of us moved. The weight of the moment settled between us, the air thick with unspoken tension. My heart was racing, not just from the embarrassment, but from something else. Something unexpected, the way Lucas had looked at me, even if just for a split second, had left an undeniable charge in the air. "Lucas, ever heard of knocking?" I finally managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, of course. He shook his head, cutting himself off. Without another word, he quickly stepped back and shut the door. I exhaled sharply, pressing a hand to my chest. What just happened? Why was my heart still pounding? This had to be just an awkward accident, nothing more, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in that brief exchange. The image of the way Lucas had looked at me, his stunned, almost admiring gaze, lingered in my mind. I wrapped myself in the towel and leaned against the counter, trying to steady my thoughts. My mind kept replaying the moment, the way his eyes had locked with mine, the tension in the air. It was absurd, wasn't it? He was Daniel's brother. He had always been just Lucas, the younger sibling who occasionally crashed at our place when he was in town. And yet for the first time I was seeing him in a different light. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thoughts creeping into my mind. This was nothing more than an awkward accident, an unfortunate mistake that we would both forget. But deep down, I knew this was the moment that would change everything. As I walked toward the mirror, I examined myself. My red lingerie clung to my body, accentuating the maturity that came with age, while still preserving my youthful appeal. At 35, the years had treated me well. It wasn't just my body, my eyes, my hair. Everything about me still looked vibrant and fresh. My muscles were toned from regular workouts, my skin soft, smooth, and flawless. Seeing myself this way gave me confidence. But even as I admired my reflection, my mind drifted to the way Lucas had looked at me. That watchful gaze, the moment he saw me, lingered in my thoughts. I found myself wondering, what was he really thinking? How carefully had he studied me? A part of me tried to push these thoughts away, but I couldn't stop myself. As I took in my own reflection, proud of my physical attributes, I couldn't ignore the way I looked in my red lingerie. How undeniably alluring I felt. In an instant, a memory surfaced. Lucas stepping out of the shower, a towel wrapped around his waist, droplets of water tracing down his chest. My breath hitched as an unfamiliar warmth settled in my stomach. I had always found him attractive. Physically, he was impressive, but something about the way I saw him was changing. The simple admiration I had for him in the past was beginning to shift into something more, a spark of curiosity, a hint of something deeper, resonated within me, stirring emotions I wasn't prepared to face. Then, just as quickly as the thought came, guilt followed. Daniel, my husband, was still in my life. At 42, a successful businessman, his world revolved around work, leaving little time for me. I had spent countless nights questioning our marriage. Were we truly happy, or had I simply grown accustomed to the loneliness? Over time, Daniel's interest in me had waned. After returning from a long business trip, I realized how distant he had become, how indifferent he seemed to my presence. We tried to reconnect, but the warmth that once existed between us had faded. His focus remained on his career, and I felt like an afterthought. That evening was just another routine night. Daniel came home from work, had dinner with me, and then retreated into his world of emails and phone calls. Then, out of nowhere, he mentioned something unexpected. "We're going to a party tomorrow," he said. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of excitement. A party, a chance to distract myself, to reignite something between us. I had heard about this event weeks ago and imagined how wonderful it would be to have a night alone with Daniel, to bask in his attention and remind him of the connection we once had. But then Lucas spoke up. "I have a flight tomorrow evening," he said with a sigh. "I'm visiting a friend, so you two can go alone. By the time you're back, I'll already be on my flight." That was just like Lucas. Free-spirited, young, unburdened. It was easy for him to make spontaneous plans. Meanwhile, Daniel was too preoccupied with work to care about things like this. Still, I clung to the idea of the party as a chance to bridge the growing distance between us. The next evening, I took my time getting ready. I wanted to impress Daniel, to remind him of the woman he once couldn't take his eyes off. I slipped into a red, form-fitting dress, styled my hair to perfection, and applied my makeup with meticulous care. When I stepped out, I felt radiant. I wanted him to look at me the way he used to. But as the night unfolded, things didn't go as planned. Even as I stood beside him, looking my best, I could feel the emotional chasm between us. The party ended, but the evening I had imagined, one where we would reconnect, never came. Instead, Daniel turned to me and said, "I have a business meeting with some colleagues. I'll be heading out for a bit." I stared at him, trying to mask my disappointment. I had dressed up for him, made an effort, but it didn't matter. He was leaving me alone. Again. As I watched him walk away, something inside me shifted. A realization settled over me, heavier than ever before. I had spent years trying to keep our marriage alive, holding on to a connection that Daniel had long abandoned, and in that moment I couldn't help but think of Lucas again. The way he looked at me, the attention he gave me, things Daniel no longer offered. I exhaled, pressing my fingers against my temple. I had told myself that my feelings for Lucas were fleeting, nothing more than a passing thought. But as I stood there, feeling more alone than ever, I wondered if that was really the truth. And if it wasn't, what did that mean for me? I was alone again, completely alone. Something inside me broke. I couldn't quite define what it was, but an overwhelming sadness settled over me. The night I had imagined, the night I was supposed to spend with Daniel, had slipped through my fingers. By the time I got home, I was drunk and hollow, the weight of my solitude pressing down on me. Upstairs, I stripped off my dress, letting it pool at my feet. My reflection caught my eye. Standing there in just my black lace lingerie, I realized all my effort had been for nothing. The hours spent preparing, the anticipation, the hope, all wasted. Frustration bubbled up inside me, threatening to spill over. I felt empty, abandoned, and yet there was a simmering anger beneath it all. I needed something, anything, to get through this night. Determined to clear my head, I quickly made my way to the kitchen. Maybe a drink, maybe a cigarette, something to take the edge off, to help me pull myself together. I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle, and poured a generous amount of alcohol into a glass. As I took a sip, I reached for a pack of cigarettes, lighting one with slightly trembling hands. The smoke burned my throat, a sensation that oddly mirrored the ache in my chest. Everything felt like it had come to a halt, stuck in place, forcing me to confront my loneliness head on. Then, something unexpected happened. I heard a footstep. My eyes darted to the kitchen doorway, and there he was. Lucas. I blinked in confusion. Lucas was supposed to be gone, his plans set, his flight taking him far from here. But now he was standing in front of me, and I had no idea when he had come back or why he was here. For a moment I stood frozen, completely thrown off balance. My mind had been occupied with thoughts of Daniel, of how alone I felt without him. But now, standing there, faced with Lucas, everything shifted. Lucas had originally planned to leave, but something must have changed. His friend's plans had fallen through. His flight had been canceled. Things I hadn't even considered. And now here we were, face to face in the dimly lit kitchen. I could feel the cool air against my bare skin, suddenly hyper-aware of how exposed I was. The black lace clung to me, a reminder of what the night was supposed to be. Standing there like this, in front of Lucas, was something I never would have anticipated. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a deep breath, attempting to steady myself. I'm sorry, Lucas, I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know you were here. I swallowed, my throat tight. I didn't expect to see you. I lowered my gaze, embarrassed, avoiding eye contact. I wasn't sure how to process this moment, how to untangle the mess of emotions running through me. But when I finally forced myself to look up, Lucas didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, he took a step closer, his expression unreadable. Then his voice cut through the silence. "Clara, why are you crying?" There was something different about the way he spoke. His tone was softer, more sincere, carrying an emotion I hadn't heard from him before. His eyes locked onto mine, as if searching for the truth beneath my silence. He took another step, closing the distance between us, his gaze unwavering. And then he smiled, not just with his lips, but with his eyes too. A warmth flickered there, something deeper than just sympathy. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, yet something about his presence grounded me. He wasn't just affecting me physically, there was something else, something emotional. The intensity of his gaze made it impossible to look away. I took a shaky breath, my pulse quickening. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just lost in my own sadness. There was something else there, something unspoken between us. And instead of stepping back, instead of shielding myself from the uncertainty, I did something I never would have expected. I stepped toward him. His eyes flickered with something unreadable. Understanding, maybe even something more. The moment stretched between us, heavy with emotion, my thoughts tangled in chaos, but my body, my heart, seemed to know something my mind hadn't yet accepted. Lucas reached out, hesitating for just a second before brushing his fingers lightly against my arm. The touch sent a shiver through me, igniting a strange, unfamiliar warmth inside my chest. For so long I had been drowning in my loneliness, grasping at something that no longer existed with Daniel. But now, as I stood there looking into Lucas's sincere gaze, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just alone anymore. I was seen. He spoke, and the sincerity in his voice both surprised and comforted me. He took another step closer, and I felt myself getting lost in the depth of his gaze. "I feel so close to you," Lucas murmured. "These feelings surprise me, but I can feel you, Clara. I can feel you so close." A whirlwind of emotions swirled inside me, my heart racing as I tried to make sense of it all. His words exposed the complexity of the situation, the tangled emotions we both felt. But at that moment, the warmth of his closeness, the way he moved toward me, made everything else fade away. The intensity in his eyes affected me in an entirely new way. Slowly, I met his gaze again and with a trembling voice admitted, "I was alone, Lucas. I was really alone. But right now, everything feels different. For the first time, I feel young, excited, and lost. I feel like something is changing." It was difficult to put into words, but everything Lucas made me feel was too real to ignore. Then, in an instant, the moment was shattered. The door swung open. A voice cut through the air. "Clara?" Daniel stood in the doorway, his eyes wide in shock. Time seemed to stop as we all froze, locked in place, unsure of what to do. Lucas and I were still staring at each other when reality came crashing down. Nathan's expression shifted, his face contorted in disbelief and fury. His chest rose and fell with uneven breaths as he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. His silence only lasted for a second before it erupted into something violent. What the hell is going on here? His voice was rough, filled with an anger so raw it sent shivers down my spine. Everything spiraled out of control in an instant. The rage in his voice was like thunder, shaking the walls of the house. His expression was dark with disappointment, his lips curling in fury. "What the hell is this?" he repeated, his voice thick with disbelief. But it wasn't just the words. It was the weight of his emotions, the bitterness seeping into every syllable. Nathan turned to Lucas, pointing a shaking hand at him. "Get the hell out of here. You don't belong in this house anymore." His voice broke slightly, but his fury overshadowed any sign of weakness. "She's my wife. She's your brother's wife. And you," he clenched his fists, "you had no right to drag her into this. What the hell were you thinking?" I couldn't say anything. The shock, the weight of the moment paralyzed me. My throat closed, my body trembling, my mind racing. I could see the betrayal in Nathan's eyes, the pain, the devastation. My vision blurred as my eyes filled with tears, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. Nathan's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Why, Clara? Why did you do this?" His voice cracked, and for the first time, I heard the deep hurt beneath his rage. "What did I ever do to deserve this?" His words made my heart ache. The pain in his voice was unbearable. "How can someone be okay with losing both their husband and their brother in the same night?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "You looked me in the eye and lied." I felt shattered inside, but no words would come. Tears streamed down my face, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. Nothing I could say would change anything. Nathan exhaled sharply, his patience breaking entirely. "Oh, come on, get out," he roared, shoving the door open. "There's no place for you two in this house anymore." The finality of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. I turned to Lucas, our eyes locking, both of us feeling the weight of what we had done. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The damage was done. After a long silence, Lucas finally exhaled and spoke. "Let's go." I nodded, unable to form words. "Let's get out of here." As we stepped outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. The tears wouldn't stop, streaming freely down my face. The guilt was overwhelming, suffocating. My head spun, my thoughts tangled and chaotic. Everything had happened so fast. I had acted without thinking, and now I was left to deal with the consequences. I wrapped my arms around myself, shaking as I whispered, "How could I have done this?" The words tasted bitter in my mouth. My hands trembled as I covered my face, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I had betrayed Nathan. I had broken my vows. I had hurt someone who didn't deserve this. With every step I took away from that house, the regret grew heavier, crushing me. I had no idea what to do, no way to undo what had been done. I felt like I was drowning. Lucas turned to me, concern flickering in his eyes. But even he couldn't take away the pain that had settled deep in my chest. He hesitated for a moment before pulling away, taking a step back. And in that moment, even as everything fell apart, I clung to the smallest sliver of hope. "Go ahead, Clara. Lucas whispered. "Everything's going to be different now." I watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing into the night. I took a deep breath, stepping forward, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Despite the darkness, despite the pain, I had to believe that somehow I would find my way back to myself, that somehow I would start over. If you've made it this far, I know you're hooked on the story. There's so much more to share, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Don't forget to hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. I'm eager to hear your thoughts, so let's chat in the comments. Hello everyone, my name is Olivia Carter, and today I want to share a story from my past that still lingers in my mind, bringing with it a mix of pain and regret. Every time I think about it, my heart aches, and I can't help but wonder if things could have turned out differently. It's an experience I wish I had never gone through, but as we all know, life is never simple. This story began many years ago when I was just 19, living with my family in the vibrant city of New York, a place full of charm, but also its own shadows. At the time, I believed I had everything. My family was wealthy, and both my parents were incredibly successful. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video until the end. Trust me, it's going to be an unforgettable journey. Please hit the like button to show your support. My father, Jonathan, was a dedicated businessman, and my mother, Eleanor, was an award-winning architect with impeccable taste. Despite their demanding careers, my parents always made an effort to spend time with me and my two older brothers, Daniel and Ethan. They were 3 years older than me, and if I had to describe them, I would say they were both incredibly handsome and charismatic. I had always been proud to have brothers like them. As the youngest, I was undeniably spoiled by my parents. They made sure I never lacked anything, whether it was material possessions or love. But the truth was, no matter how much my parents cared for me, it never quite compared to the love I received from Daniel and Ethan. They weren't just my brothers, they were my protectors, my closest companions, always there to look after me. What made their love feel so different from my parents was the way they expressed it, not through grand gestures, but through constant, unwavering presence. My parents' love ensured I had a privileged life, but Daniel and Ethan went beyond that. They understood me in ways my parents sometimes couldn't. Whenever I was feeling down, they would sense it, even if I didn't say a word. They were always the first people I turned to when I needed to talk, and they listened without judgment. When I was younger and faced difficulties at school, it was always Daniel and Ethan who stepped in to defend me. I remember one particular instance when my classmates teased me for the outfit I was wearing. I came home in tears, and my brothers immediately noticed my distress. They didn't resort to aggression, but their sharp words and quiet intensity were enough to ensure those classmates never bothered me again. To me, they were heroes, always ready to stand by my side. I cherished our family evenings together, but my favorite place was always between my brothers. They would wrap their arms around me protectively, often playfully arguing over who got to sit next to me.